and welcome back to the Woods Collab podcast. My name is Nikisha Woods, and this guy is
I'm Mike Woods.
And we are so glad to join you today because we are going to talk about how to determine your level of involvement. And so what that means as far as involvement is whether or not you need to be in the weeds and you need to get your hands dirty, or whether or not you need to have more of a 50,000 foot view, higher level perspective when you approach a situation. So Mike, go ahead and get us started. So you've had lots of different roles and you've entered into organizations as a new hire, you've grown up into leadership, leading teams, and you've also had to restructure teams and move things around. How do you know how to interact with your work if you always have these different responsibilities? When do you decide when you're going to do the details versus think bigger picture?
First, it comes with being aware, being that awareness. We talk about that a lot, but being aware of what's at stake is very important, and having as much information as possible is valuable as well, while being aware of the timeliness that we have to act on the thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm quite curious by nature, and I may want all of the information before I act. But then at the same time, if I don't have as much time to do it, because maybe we have to make a move sooner than later, maybe there's some information I just might not have because of the time restraints there. So going back to awareness, depending on the resources that you have available, you work within that, because that'll determine how much I need to be in the weeds or in the fine details. How many people are working with me towards the thing? If I have a whole team working towards the thing, maybe I don't need to be involved as much and I can focus more on big picture. But let's say if it's just me doing the thing, maybe I need to be involved in the weeds a little bit more for the time being. But understanding the details, understanding the big picture will help to steer the course of where we're looking to go.
Yeah, and I think that can be tricky too, because when we say details, we're thinking as far as the when, where, what, how, history of the situation, the processes that were beforehand, how all the pieces work, what people are connected to it, etc. And so we need to know all those things in order to, like you said, make a decision. But there's going to be those moments where we have to like jump in and out of the weeds and the details a little bit too. I think as far as being a leader, from a leadership perspective, I think that it's good to have awareness around what people are doing. But in my experience, this is my own personal Nikisha experience thing. Sometimes when leaders are too involved in the details, then that's when they start to micromanage. So now they think about when they were the expert doer and they were the person who did it, this is exactly how they did it. And that doesn't mean that that's where we need to be now, right? And that may not be how this person performs the most effective way, but that is what they're focused on. And because they have the experience behind it that says it's supposed to happen a certain way, then now they want to tell them how to do every single little piece of the job. Whereas for me, I like to keep it as high level as possible, and I like to understand their thinking and trust that they are going to get us from point A to point B. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think it depends on what we're looking to accomplish and when. Because I think it's important as a leader to identify and to establish the boundaries. So it depends on what those boundaries are. If the boundaries is to go from point A to point B in as straight line as possible, may not be one to wiggle. But if the boundaries is let's go to point A to point B, I don't really care how you get there, then it's okay, I think from a leadership standpoint or a project management standpoint, you can fall back a little bit. But it's important to have once those boundaries are defined, I think that'll help to drive what's acceptable and what may be a little bit out of the box a bit.
And I think too, from the leader's perspective, like if you're afraid of failure and you're afraid for your person to fail, even if it's not really a real failure, but it's like a misstep, then you want to jump in and stop them at any given turn instead of empowering them to make a mistake or make a decision. And so it's like that, how do you balance wanting them to shine and get it right 100% of the time and trusting that they're going to hit it out of the park, and when they don't, support them through that, right? And so it's that understanding. But I think in the research phase of getting things started is where the leader at least understands those details the most, because now it's like, okay, once I understand to a certain point, not everything, but once I understand to a certain point, and my people have everything they need and everything out of their way, I'm going to take my hands off and I'm going to trust them to get us across the finish line. And then I'm going to use my knowledge that's more big picture, because I can see what's behind the curtain, right? I'm having leadership meetings and conversations where I'm finding out how all these things are working, and I'm communicating back to them how far we're going to get and how successful we can be. What do you think?
No, I agree. It goes back to what the overall goal is, what we're looking to accomplish, and what that mission is. Because this could apply on a smaller scale, but it could also apply on a much larger scale. So if we're talking about let's say 100, 200 people. All right, we got plenty of people to do this and do that. And if you're talking about a small team, say of 3 people, it might need to be a bit tighter. It all depends on that overall objective.
So you have to be fluid.
Yeah, that is key. That is key. Being fluid, knowing what the boundaries are, knowing what the mission is, knowing who is available to help out the thing, knowing what time we have to accomplish the thing. It could be fluid. Like you mentioned, we could jump in and jump out, and you could maybe rotate some pieces. It all depends on how the setup is.
Yeah, and I think that also, it's a term people use. I think they still use it, but stay in your lane.
Yeah.
People want you to stay in your lane. When you start figuring out what everybody else has going on and you start trying to do their job and, X, Y, and Z, then sometimes that doesn't always sit well with people. And so I think that, especially as an individual contributor, so you're not in leadership, knowing your role as best you can, and then keeping in mind and keeping that conversation open to understand what if I do this one thing, if I pull this thread out, who does this impact, and how does this impact or affect the people around me as far as their work, their teams, their departments. And then when we think about the organization as a whole, how does it impact that? So it's having so much knowledge about what you do every single day and the details, but also lifting your head up just high enough where you can see how those things impact, for the good or the bad, the other things around you. And then from the leadership standpoint, I would say having that big picture understanding so you can inform your associates or team members, but then when you need to roll up your sleeves and help out, you can help out, right? Even if you don't know a whole lot about what they do, if you need to bring them bagels and water to keep morale up, then you're able to do that. But if you are able to know at least something about the details, then if they have a question or they want to collaborate or they want to brainstorm, you can at least support them in that.
Yeah, and a lot of times it does mesh together. So, because I've definitely been hit with the stay in your lane piece a time or two, but it also comes with taking risk as well. Because sometimes it may require you to jump out into this other lane because you see opportunities. They might jump over there and say, "Hey, heads up, look out for that thing." If that person or that team in that lane was not aware of the thing, but now that you make that known, okay, maybe it's time to hop back. But it goes both ways. Okay, I got to know where need to jump in and get into the weeds, because maybe we're going down a path that's full of risk, or it may cause us time or cause us money and that sort of thing. But then at the same time, like you said, when the boundaries are set and that sort of thing, it's time to go back and focus on big picture.
Yeah, and I think the higher up your role goes into leadership, the more big picture will be, and the less weeds it'll be in. But I think that's good, because now we're thinking about, okay, so departments, how does it affect the other departments? But then we're starting to think about the industry and how things are moving, and we want to keep the organization afloat. And so how the work gets done is not necessarily as big of a deal as does the work get done, right? And so you're keeping the engine moving and so forth. And I think that is just helpful to understand that. So as you promote up and you become a director, a VP, etc., understanding that even though you really love the weeds and the details, you may not see them as much, but you're going to hire the right people and trust that they're able to get you over the finish line.
That's true. So keep that in mind as we evolve in our careers professionally. There's times where we may have to be aware of what's going on in the weeds, but at the same time, as we go and keep moving, there's going to be times where we have to rest with that 50,000 foot view and see things from a much bigger picture. But give us some feedback. Let us know where you are. Do you find yourself in the weeds? Do you find yourself stuck in the weeds? Do you find yourself hanging out at that 50,000 foot view? And do you get tempted to jump over in someone else's lane when you're supposed to be staying on your own lane? Give us some feedback on how you kind of maneuver and balance with that fluidity from being in the weeds, being caught up in the details, and also having that balance with making sure you stay close to the big picture. Cool? This is
The Woods Collab Podcast.
I'm Mike Woods, and this is Keisha Woods. We are the Woods Collab.